So when it comes to fundamental research, I think I've read some things before, and because I've done some pieces on you in Fairfax, some of the techniques that you've used and some of the filtering processes that you I guess you pull from the universe and then you go away and do further research. Yeah. So perhaps you can take us through some of those examples of. You mentioned Tab earlier on. It's kind of like this business where you just get a scuttlebutt. You're walking past the street and you see the business there. Are there any other examples like that? Is that how you get a lot of your ideas?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say there's just 5 ways I probably get ideas. The first way by far is just I subscribe to the Peter Lynch theory that, you could just, looking at the things around you and the companies that like you don't have to be an amazing fund manager to find these things. Like, companies around you are often the best pick. I like his story about his best pick in his fund was his wife was quite obsessed with these legs pantyhose. Like you put them in like a colourful plastic egg at the supermarket, and Haynes was selling these, and normally stockings you would buy at the department store, but these were selling through the actual supermarket. Okay. So his wife wouldn't stop talking about these amazing stockings she was buying, these plastic eggs. So he finally sort of did some research on it, and a 30 bagger for his fund. Yeah, wow. And I just like stories like that, and I think I've read his book One Up on Wall Street a few times, so I definitely subscribe to that Peter Lynch philosophy. And so one of my best picks is Lovisa, the jewellery company. They sell earrings at Chatty and all around the world. So I always sort of would, buy presents from Lovisa, and I would go into the store at Chadstone, and I always thought when that business lists, I would love to buy shares in that business. So Morgans did the IPO in 2014, and is that long ago? And so I bought shares in Lovisa just after it listed, and I held them for a while, and I think one day this was before I had a lot of my other stock techniques, but one day in the January, there was this guy, I don't know if you remember, from the Bank of Scotland. He said there was going to be a cataclysmic crash on the stock market.
I do remember something like that.
And so I didn't have a lot of shares in those days. My main holding was Lovisa, and I think it had gone from about $2 to about $3.60 or something. I'm like, this is doing pretty well. And then a few of my girlfriends that weren't into shares at all rang me and said, Angie, there's going to be this cataclysmic crash on the stock market. I'm like, oh no, how terrible. So I sold my Lovisa shares, and a couple of days later they actually had a cataclysmic crash down to $2. Right. The rest of the stock market was fine. Okay. So somehow the guy from the Bank of Scotland anticipated this collapse in the Lovisa share price. So I was quite fortunate, and just quite a fluke got out of it, and got back at $2.
Right, okay.
So
it was fortuitous then?
It was really weird. And so I'm a lot better. I don't, that's like I have a lot better systems in place. This is very early days. And so I do follow the Lovisa story quite closely. And when it listed, it had about 220 stores, and now there's sort of over 360 stores. And I follow the job ads. So especially in America, they've got stores opening across the US. They're in California and Florida and Texas. And I do look up the job ads, so I know where all the new stores are opening and how many new stores they've got coming up. And so because initially they were just going to open stores in California, but I could see they were advertising in Texas and Florida, and I ring the stores overseas. I actually chat to the stores in the States and just find out if they're busy and how's it going there. And I chat to the ladies in the stores. And I do, when I was in Kuala Lumpur a couple of years ago for a family holiday, I dragged the kids around to all the Lovisa stores in KL. They loved that. They thought that was...
Right, it's a great way to do boots on the ground research.
They're like, really, Mum, we're seriously going to another Lovisa store. So I go to the AGM. I like to talk to the management at the AGM, and I follow that story quite closely.
So that's one... And it's an interesting leading indicator, that job ads, because it signals that they're investing, because typically employees are one of the more expensive things in the business. It signals that they're investing for growth.
Yes.
That was kind of like this first method, is kind of this boots on the ground research. Can you articulate a bit more on the other types of strategies you use to find these ideas?
Yeah, well, and definitely that sort of idea of things around you was very much part of that Afterpay, finding Afterpay, because I helped out a friend who was working in a high-end clothing shop one day. She'd broken her knee, so I sort of had to help her out a little bit in the store, and I sort of had a peek into her lay-by room, this was before Afterpay, and I could just see how big a problem lay-by was for retailers, because all day people would come in to look at their lay-by, and it was just impossible to find anything in that lay-by room. It was all just so chock-a-block. And so when I read about Afterpay, I knew that was going to be huge. I just thought it just solves this lay-by problem for retailers, and that's going to be a big thing. So just finding businesses like that. But definitely my other ways of finding great ideas will be from the AFR, like just reading the AFR in the Australian.
Yep.
Yeah, like I did read about Afterpay in the AFR before it listed, and I've sort of followed that story quite closely as well. And I found out about Reliance Worldwide. They sell the plumbing fittings. I bought a shark bite.
I was wondering what this is.
Yeah, what's this?
If you're listening on the podcast, you can't see it, but it's on our video. There's this little attachment here.
So why has Angie bought this plumbing fitting? But yes, so I've read about Reliance Worldwide before they listed in the AFR, and so I thought, that sounds very interesting. I found out about this shark bite, push to connect connectors. I thought, okay, well, I better go and find out about these things. So I went to a plumbing store in Nunawading, and I said I'd like to buy one of these, shark bite push to connect connectors. And they said, well, certainly I don't think many women actually go into those sorts of stores. And they said, well, what size would you like? And I said, it doesn't matter. And they're like, I think it does, lady. And I'm like, no, just something I know about $5. They're like, okay, that's really weird. So I bought one of these things, and then I waited outside the plumbing supply place and just spoke to plumbers for about an hour and said, explain to me what this is and why is it important, and do you think it's good? And they'll explain to me, you can connect the pipes, you don't have to do soldering and gluing, it attaches quite easily. So after chatting to all these plumbers about these connectors for an hour, I got to understand the business quite well, and I did make a bit of money from that share after having that experience, and it hit my stop, and I've been out of it for quite a while. But I just like the idea that investors, it's not just a stock code, they actually go and physically, if you can buy the product, go and buy the product and go and talk to people in the industry about what that product means.